I benefited immensely from what I was doing, but it wasn't, my life wasn't me focused. My life became focused on them. And in the process, I got healthier.
You just heard Zach Skow with Marley's Mutts. Zach founded his nonprofit organization back in 2009 with the purpose of providing second chances. He has since implemented the Pawsitive Change Prison Program and MarleysMutts Therapy Dog Program. Today was a great episode. Before I get into the details of it, I want to remind our listeners to catch up on our last episode with Josh King. We discussed COVID ramifications in the classroom, and he's just a fun guy to talk to. Today we sat down with Zach Skow of Marley's Mutts, and we talked about how he started his nonprofit. He shared with us his moving story and his road to sobriety that he's been on for the last 13 years. We talked a little bit about the most recent mission he went on to rescue 300 dogs out of Afghanistan. Talked about his Pawsitive Paws program out of the prisons here locally. Talked about some volunteer opportunities here in Bakersfield and Kern County that to donate people's time and money to help with the programs. We talked about his love for the community. He talked about, Motor City giving him his first car to help with the nonprofit, and his success is, he credits exactly to the people of Kern County, and it's a heartwarming story. And if you haven't heard it yet, I encourage you to take a listen. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the Our 2 Cents podcast, the show where your local professionals sit down with an array of guests to hear their story and impart some wisdom for both business and life-improving skills. This is your place to hear business and community leaders discuss relevant topics that matter to you.
And welcome back to the Our 2 Cents podcast. I'm Kyle Jones, and we have a special co-host today, Dave Plivelich with the Marcom group. Dave, how's it going, buddy?
It's going very well, thank you.
You went there with a deep voice there, too.
Yeah, I did.
And we have back in the studio as our guest, Zach Skow with Marley's Mutts. He joined us, I think I looked, it was about a year ago.
Yeah, maybe a little more.
Yeah, and it was on Zoom, and you were in a car with, I think, a dog you were just rescuing.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I don't know where you were coming from. Do you recall where you were at when you did the interview?
I have no idea, man, but every day's, they're all a little bit different, but they all involve dogs, and I'm usually in my car.
Yep. And you were picking them up from it was a shelter. I'm not trying to remember this.
Probably here at Kern County Animal Services.
Might have been. Yeah. And you pulled off on the side of the road. Yeah. Did the interview, and the dog was just kind of in the back seat
oh, yeah, that's right.
What's going on?
We were at Inyo County. That's where it was.
There
I remember. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we were at Inyo County, which is up near on the way to Mammoth, borders the Paiute-Shoshone Reservation up there. It's a beautiful place.
And we also have another guest in the studio.
Superstar. She's a superstar. Let's get that right.
And I don't think she's going to be talking today, but
you never know.
She's going to be sitting on Dad's lap, and her name is?
This is Cor Rose. This is my famous bipedal two-legged rescue poodle.
Yes. If you followed any of Zach's Instagram stories, you will have seen her before. My favorite one is the hopping up the stairs.
Yeah, I think we're both codependent. It's pretty obvious through social media if you wanted to get a peek as to the nature and essence of our relationship.
And you mentioned it 40-year anniversary together, is that right?
Today, yeah. This week, these few days. So 4 years ago, we brought her in from Madera, the shelter up in Madera. They had called us up because we had a dog whose legs we had to amputate right prior to that. So we had a two-legged dog, a dog who required double front leg amputation. And this dog, Cora, had the same issue. Bilateral fractures, multiple fractures of her front legs, broken back, broken pelvis, so broken everything. She needed to have that surgery in order to save her life. So we performed it one at a time. We tried to save the one leg. We had to amputate the first immediately. She had a very bad bone infection from lack of treatment. And then that second leg, we really tried and it was not possible. So ended up having to ultimately amputate the second front leg. And that's when her process began of trying to get herself to the position where she is now, which is completely free and utterly in every moment. She loves every second of every day and is one of the biggest role models in my life in terms of showing me how to get through tough moments, how to live in the moment, how to not feel sorry for myself. Most importantly, that's a leftover character defect from non-sobriety,
which I do want to get back into as well, if you don't mind. But
sure, yeah. So she's just a joy, man. She really has taught me so much. Her entire essence, all of this developed through what she's been through. So she was a different dog when she came to us, and as she got through this process of 6 months learning how to heel and then walk, and then now she jumps and runs all over the place. She's very remarkable. So she's just this incredible teacher. She's this wonderful bright light that I take with me as just about everywhere I can because of the effect she has on other people. I don't need her around for myself per se.
I don't know. I think you might be kidding.
I need a pink. For those who are listening and obviously not watching, she has dyed pink ears and tail. So yeah, I have a a pink accessory to go with me at all times.
And a nice necklace too. Let's not forget that.
She's blinged out for sure.
And how old is she?
She's, I don't know, probably about 8 or 9.
Okay. So she had a good 4 or 5 years of life.
Yeah, she was a street dog beforehand for sure. All street dog tendencies, just trash, scrapping with other dogs. She's a she's a hilarious little kid. But now she loves every dog she's ever met. She loves every person she's ever met, and she just really has this unique ability to
and rolls over quickly to get her belly rubbed.
She knows her spots. She knows her spots. Yeah, she's gonna come up again in conversation because she came with us to Washington, so she's been with us just about everywhere.
That's great. The positivity of what you do is why we wanted to have you back on, and I guess she's just another testament to that. I encourage everyone obviously to go back and listen to the last episode, and I don't want to rehash all of it, and I'm sure you've told your story 100 times, if not 1,000, but for people who have not heard your story and who maybe don't want to take time to go back and listen, Dave, I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but
I can give the Cliff Notes
give us
version.
give us a little Cliff Notes.
So I spent a lot of time drinking and using drugs. I went through some things in childhood, and I think I just have a natural inclination towards alcoholism. And so that was what my focus was for a long time, kind of meandering through life, struggling a lot of personal hatred, hatred for myself, a lot of feeling fundamentally uncomfortable in my own skin and not really knowing how to navigate life, afraid of a lot of stuff that I didn't know how to deal with, cope with, other than through alcohol and drugs. My liver failed in 2008. I started to turn yellow, started to swell in my belly, started to kind of leak blood from both ends, and got diagnosed, went to Bakersfield Memorial Hospital. They basically said, you're dying of liver failure and you need a liver transplant. You're not going to get one. You need 6 months sobriety to even qualify, and you're not going to live 6 months. So that was clearly a very scary time in life. There were really no options here in Bakersfield. I spent a long time there at Bakersfield Memorial, and then finally was transferred. I wasn't really transferred. I was broken out of Bakersfield Memorial Hospital. My dad just had enough. He said, you're dying here. You're
not going to sit here and watch you die.
Every week. I mean, I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. By that time, I'd become addicted to drugs in the hospital. They were giving me morphine and Dilaudid every 3 hours. So I got basically a meeting with the Comprehensive Transplant Center at Cedars-Sinai. They admitted me to that program, and that really saved my life. They took me off almost all of my medications, sent me away from the hospital. They sent me home, told my dad, basically, keep an eye on your son. You guys are going to need to have to go to the emergency room often to take care of him. He's deathly ill, but we don't want to admit you because it will kill him. So it was a very tough spot, to know I needed 6 months of sobriety to survive, to get my liver transplant, but not knowing how I was going to do any of that, and being absolutely terrified of the world, and then being so physically ill. I was very, very ill. I had ammonia on my brain, so I didn't know what day it was, confused. Often what was happening, constantly confused, and it really vacillated between like totally lucid and completely out of my mind.
Did you want, at this point of your story, did you want it? Did you want sobriety?
Oh, no. Definitely not.
Okay.
I think I was excited that I had not drank. That was never thinkable for me. To go even a day without alcohol was impossible. So to know that I'd achieved a few days was great, or a few weeks, but I was so scared to be me, I didn't know how to do it. And so every day alive was just extreme suffering, obvious physical suffering of just what I was going through being in liver failure, and everything else that fails when you're in liver failure, your pancreas, your kidneys, your everything goes. Yeah. And it really wasn't until I'd been working with dogs since 2003, 2004, so several years before I got sick. And I just by habit picked it up. I had 3 rescue dogs in my home, and they really took over caring for me along with my dad. He had to change I couldn't care for myself. So I couldn't use the bathroom. There was a lot of challenges I had. But my dogs really gave me that vision that things could be okay, that they were going to be okay, and that I was not only lovable, but I was made of love, right? And that I was worthy of life, and that they needed me. And it was just this process of kind of chipping away at all of the rust and everything else that had built up around my spirit, and helping me understand what was real and what was nonsense. I have a narrative in my head that's incorrect. I lie to myself constantly. There's a son of a gun up there who
I think we all do, but maybe yours was a little more intense.
He's a just relentless SOB, the other guy living up there in my head. And working with the dogs just gave me a way to focus on something else, to focus on their lives and be of service to them. And when you're of service to something, it really takes you out of that hyperactive ego whatever you're struggling with, but that super, super me focus, it led to being able to be creative because I had to write all the dog stories. I started taking in dogs every week. We were taking in more and more and more. And for every dog I took in, this is pre-social media. So I had to write their biographies to put on the website. I had to print up their posters to put all over Tehachapi. And that's really how Marley's Mutts started. It was I just started writing these posters because I'd have 15 foster dogs living in my garage. I'm yellow and liver failure. I got a bunch of dogs. My dad's taking care of me. Everyone's kind of going, what is up with this guy?
Who is this guy? What is he doing?
What is this thing? I'm fostering for other organizations. And it just kind of came together. I talked about it at meetings, at recovery meetings constantly. I started making t-shirts to sell, basically to raise money
funds,
for spay and neuter, and my community just really came to my support and kept saying, you ought to do this. And every month that went by, I got physically better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And I'm just walking every day in the hills, walking with my dogs, adding more dogs, getting some adopted, making posters. And I'm no longer spending all this time rooted in what isn't good about me or my life or life in general. Instead, I'm focusing on their lives and what I can do to be productive and how I can help them get adopted. And finding that purpose totally shifted me into something different. I started living for a set of values that had nothing to do with me. And that was very helpful because I benefited immensely from what I was doing, but it wasn't, my life wasn't me focused. My life became focused on them. And in the process, I got healthier because I wasn't so focused on all of the bad parts about me, bad things that had happened to me, whatever else, things I had done to other people. Yeah, and it really set me free. It put me on a whole new trajectory in my community. I always say that Marley's Mutts is something that only could have happened in Kern County because we have such a incredible nonprofit feel and we have such a giving, per capita, we give more than anyone else. People don't realize how poor Kern County is comparatively.
Yeah.
When oil prices are high, it's the one thing. And when maybe renewable resources are big in Tehachapi, we have little economic booms, right? But generally speaking, we have some of the poorest districts in the United States.
Yes, very true.
And yet we are one of the most giving communities per capita. And yeah, it was just really my community that said, hey, you're doing a great job with this. You ought to do this. And they gave me the kind of guts to do it. And we've never looked back since. We were talking about Motor City when I came in here, and it just like all of these variables came together to produce this nonprofit organization that's helped do a whole lot of good in this community. And it didn't really, I have an entrepreneurial spirit. I'm very entrepreneurial. My dad, my mom, I come from a long line of my twin brother, but it could not have happened without this community. And I always look back on it with a really fond memory of how organic and natural it all happened. It wasn't like I sat back one day and said, I'm going to form a dog rescue. I
wrote a business plan.
Yeah, I got sick and this series of kind of miracles happened for me. And ultimately for my family. And fast forward now, I have 2 beautiful daughters and all of these things, 13 years sobriety and all these things that I never thought I would have, and just the impossibilities. I had so many insecurities when I got sober. I didn't think I'd be able to participate in having kids. I didn't think I'd be able to get married. I didn't think I'd be able to, all that stuff. And not only have we made a huge impact on animal welfare in our community, we've done a lot of things for people and help bring us together. And I'm just extremely grateful for Kern County. It's a special place.
Well, I don't want to gloss over because, Dave, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Zach's story, but you did not end up needing a liver transplant.
Oh, yeah,
correct?
I missed that part.
Which is, to me, the most amazing part of the story right now.
That was one of my next questions.
Yeah, so at 6 months, I was going down there every 3 days in the beginning. So I had to get tested, evaluated constantly. I was so sick and I had such bad levels. I was like flirting with morbidity constantly. So I was going down there every couple of days, then every week, then every couple of weeks. And then by the time I got to 6 months of sobriety and 6 months out of the hospital, I was completely different. I had progressed so much. I'll never forget Dr. Tran when I went down for my 6-month review. This was like the review where they're going to say, all right, kiddo, you've done
qualify,
good. Yeah, you've done everything we've asked you to do. You're in good standing. You've sent us all your meetings. I had to go to a meeting a day. I had to go to a meeting every day. And I had to fax them proof that I was going to meetings. Yeah, to prove that I was sober. And
which, they don't want to,
yeah, and I'm not Mickey Mantle.
You don't want to, yeah.
I don't blame them for having requirements.
Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, not to say that you didn't deserve it, but someone else who maybe was not.
I know somebody who got a liver transplant and drank himself to death. Yeah.
After the transplant?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, with months after their transplant.
Anyway.
So it was just the whole genesis of Marley's Mutts just blows me away. How it all happened and being able to, when Dr. Tran said to me, like, I don't even know what's happened with you, but basically keep doing it. And she just couldn't understand, like, how did you get from this sick? And she always would tell me, it's because of your age, because you're younger. But we've never seen this before. I've never seen anyone go from acute alcoholic cirrhosis to, like, right now, I don't even have cirrhosis anymore.
Because they said it was end stage, right?
That was end stage.
To me, usually when you're in stage, it's just a matter of time going.
You either get a transport or you pass
right,
away.
Right.
Yeah. So end stage is it's a scary word. You get on the Mayo Clinic calculator and you plug in your Dr. Aziz and Dr. Manu plugged in my numbers here in Bakersfield. And when that calculator spits out that you have less than 90 days to live, it's a shocking thing. So yeah, when she said that, she said, I don't know what you're doing, man, but keep doing it. And I told her, well, I'm working with, dogs and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. She's like, whatever it is, just keep doing it. And since then I've been enrolled in this study that a 3-seater Sinai that evaluates people who have come back from end stage. So I'm one of, I don't know how many people are in this, but they evaluate me every 6 months and they have to do that anyway, because once you're end stage, you're always part of the program. So you're always a comprehensive transplant patient once you've been diagnosed end stage. So that's a little confusing. People always say, how are you a transplant patient? You don't need a transplant. And it's because I was that sick. They keep you in good standing. You're always part of that program.
And how do you feel now?
I feel good.
I mean, do you any health issues with respect to your
I have a lot of ulcers. So ulcers cause me some problems. I have, a little bit of elevated liver numbers in terms of my AST, my ALT, my liver enzymes.
What have you done with your diet? I mean, obviously diet.
Everything changed. Everything changed. That's one of the things that folks don't really, it's not a natural American tendency, especially because we're so pharmaceutical leaning, is to think we want a pill to fix us. And I became sick because I put a bunch of terrible stuff in my body. So the first thing I did was stop putting terrible stuff in my body. And I just radically changed my diet. I couldn't have any salt. The only feedback they give you, no nutritionist, no anything. They just say, don't eat salt, which is a really good recommendation because salt is terrible when you carry that much water, already have that much water retention already in your, I looked 9 months pregnant. I have stretch marks and my belly button was herniated. I used to tape my belly button down under my shirt because it looked funny having this belly button poking out of my t-shirt. So I was taping it.
I had a friend that was on his deathbed and I sat inches away from his face and just, I loved him to death, but like, dude, you did this to yourself, man. You really did. That's a hard thing to say.
It is.
He was bloated.
It's the toughest thing to watch, man. Liver failure is no joke. I watched the same thing here down the street and also listen to the family refuse to acknowledge it. So he was there and he was in the ICU for 4 weeks. When saw him every couple of days, he ended up, one of the ways you pass away, I'm sorry, listeners, for this being graphic, but it's a condition called esophageal varices where the veins in your throat and your esophagus rupture. They become varicose and then they rupture because of the pressure. There's so much portal hypertension and you bleed out orally. You bleed out of your mouth. And watching his varices burst in the ICU and watching this cart come in, they cauterized his throat. I mean, they dug into his mouth and cauterized his throat. I mean, he ended up passing away a couple of days later from that condition, but it's a terrible thing to see. And we only see it right at the end of alcoholism. It's right at the end. So that we can kind of sweep it under the rug, not pay much attention to it. None of us really have to look at our patterns. Alcoholism is so well worn into our culture. It is so well worn that, you're the crazy person for stopping drinking.
Right.
Like you always have to explain yourself.
Why don't you drink? Right.
Why the hell don't you drink? Don't you know how good it is? Alcohol is it's done a lot for me, to be honest. I mean, we all have insecurities, voices, anxieties, and alcohol is a great sedative in that way. Yeah. But it's also a terrible coping mechanism in that it doesn't actually encourage you to cope with anything. It encourages you to bury things. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was part of my initial crusade, right? With just I was angry at alcohol. I was angry, so many people I've loved have died of alcoholism and drug addiction. So many, I mean, dozens and really wonderful people. And the attention that it kind of got was not about what created it. It was always, I don't think alcohol and the patterns around alcohol have really gotten the evaluation they deserve culturally. And I hope one day maybe we get to that.
Yeah. I mean, there's one thing to socially use alcohol and there's another thing to depend on it, to function. Yeah. But, you probably may disagree with this, but to me, if anything in moderation is probably going to be okay. And our body has a pretty good way of righting the ship when you moderate, but even too much water is not good for you, right? You can't just live on, just eating vegans are like, oh, okay, just eat salad. Well, if you eat all you eat was just salad, too much of that is not going to be good for your body. Not going to be good for your digestive tract. So I always kind of look at things, just moderate the best you can, and hopefully your body will take care of.
I got a question for you. I mean, I've seen close friends go through this type of stuff, and not everybody is going to be able to have a bunch of dogs. They're caring for, getting through that process. I mean, I've got, one buddy that's doesn't want to do AA because he doesn't believe in God. But it's like, well, you need that help. You need that support. You just can't sit inside that house.
No, you cannot. That's the insanity of it.
And pray this is going to go away and getting them.
Well, for me, I'll just touch on that briefly. I mean, I think that's a great question. And you hit on a big pain point for people. And it's such a misconception. I mean, I hesitate to engage because we're not really supposed to talk about 12-step programs publicly, but the best thing, I grew up atheist. I grew up like a militant atheist. We had this club called the New Life Club at our high school. It was the religious club. And we formed one called the Real Life Club. And theirs was this beautiful cross. It was their logo with some birds. And ours was an upside down cross with a cross through it. It was just so provocative and insulting. And we just wanted to debate them. And so as a person who understands what it is to be agnostic leaning, I totally get it. But the really special thing about recovery in most programs where they lead you is to a God of your understanding. There is no Jesus, Buddha, Vishnu, Hare Krishna. We're not talking about Muhammad. It's none of those people. It's not your parents. But it is your parents, and it is your dogs, and it is the trees outside and the great blue sky and the infinite amount of stars in our universe and elsewhere. And it is about positivity and love. Your God, all it has to be is something other than you. Yeah. That's all God really needs to be, is a power greater than yourself. That's all you need to acknowledge, is that there is a power that has created all of this, that you can be plugged into, that you can have conscious contact with through prayer and meditation and other things, that is available to you to guide you. And it is there. And again, I choose to call it God, but you can call it anything. Yeah. You can call it water bottle. You can call it anything. If that word is uncomfortable for you, I get it. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of trauma associated with that word. So it can be called anything. And I struggled with it more than anybody in the beginning because I thought they were telling me I had to be religious. Yeah. But there's nothing about religion. None. Nothing. Zero. Less than zero.
With your case, though, I think some people are afraid to ask for help. But you were in a situation where did you really hit that wall of asking for help? No. Or it was basically you were forced into...
I was forced to. I was a stubborn son of a gun. The mental illness of addiction will keep you from asking for help for as long as possible because that disease has to stay alive. It's like an organism.
Yeah.
That organism has to stay alive.
Ask for help is counterintuitive to survival. Right.
Totally. I mean, I've tried. Yeah. I tried one time, man. And I didn't ask for help. I did it on my own. I said, one day I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to use. It was 24 hours. And I got so sick that night. I was at the liquor store at 6:00 in the morning, like dying. I was shaking. I was vomiting. I was sweating. Mentally, I was experiencing such anxiety. Like you can't imagine it. There's something about when you run it. I mean, it was my biggest fear, running out of alcohol and drugs, because when I ran out, I couldn't function. I couldn't be me. There was a level of pressure and not even anxiety. It's like end of the world anxiety. Yeah. It's enveloping. It just takes you over. And that was a big part of why it's so difficult to get sober, is because every atom in my body was working together to prevent me from getting sober. I drank when I got out of the hospital. My dad took care of me for like a year.
When you got out in Bakersfield before you
I got out of the hospital, and don't tell the Cedars-Sinai Comprehensive. No, it's fine. This was 13 years ago. Yeah. So I was out for a month, a little bit more than that. My dad had been taking care of me. Everything had stopped. We had $900,000 in medical bills. My dad had so much debt from taking care of me. He had like 10 credit cards that he just racked up all this debt on. And so he had to go to work. He had to go to Brasilia, to the capital. He was gone for like literally 2.5 days. It was as quickly as you can get there and back. And I found the backup keys to the truck and drove to the liquor store. I remember thinking I just wanted to sleep because I hadn't slept in several days and my brain was going nuts. And I just wanted to taste it so I could check out, so I could just go to sleep. And I figured I was so sensitive, it wouldn't hurt to drink. And I remember that first sip, and then I don't remember anything after that for 2 full days. I came to, and there was bottles. There was a half-drank box of wine. I'd clearly gone back to the store several times, and my dad was going to be home in a few hours. And I had to walk in there and tell him, I had to gather up all the evidence, and I was so sick. like immediately. My stomach started to swell up again. All these veins start to pop up. You start to turn yellow again. Like everything starts to go again. Yeah, I walked in my dad's office and I said, we got to go to the hospital. And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, I drank again. We have to go to the hospital. And he's just like, what are you talking about? And I took off my glasses so he could see how yellow my eyes were. And he just like lost it and just kind of started crying and saying, he just kept repeating, you've killed yourself. He just said, you killed yourself. You've killed yourself. You've killed yourself. And I'm not taking you to the hospital. He was over it. He said, you drive yourself.
Was that the last?
That was the last time I had a drink.
That was the last time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll never forget that look. And I need, for anybody out there who's struggled with alcoholism or addiction and they've slipped up and they feel like, they're a bad person because of it, or 100% you are not. I needed that slip up. I needed that to remind me just how powerless I am over alcohol and drugs. I absolutely needed that slip up more than anything, because the point that you made was that I didn't make this choice. I got sick.
Yeah.
And it forced me into the hospital. I didn't make this conscious decision. So the second time I had to consciously say, all right, dude, like you really need to admit that you're powerless. And then that's when the steps start. And then you start kind of ratcheting off some of those, and it's a beautiful process. It really is.
Your friend Dave that you asked about, is that an excuse for him? Or do you think that his idea of religion being behind it is so powerful that he's not going to do it? Or is it just one of those atoms in his body saying, oh, well, here's a reason why we don't need to go to AA, so use that as an excuse?
Well, I think he came from a time where casual drinking, that was just the thing. And I think he got to a point where his body's changed. And I've had that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, dude, chemically,
you become allergic.
Has changed. And
you become allergic.
You can't.
Totally. I've seen it happen to so many people.
It's one cigarette. I can't take one puff. I know that about myself. Don't do it. Don't do it. And I think, they wake up in the morning, everything's kind of normal again.
Yep. The reset.
Conversation for 45 minutes. Text them next day, but you really need help. I get a phone call immediately going, what prompted that? And I just, don't remember the 45-minute conversation we just had last night, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I did. No, you didn't.
Yeah. I've heard it as an excuse, a ton of times. And it's understandable, because it's one of the most polarizing topics we have is religion. So if you can say, oh, well, they're trying to push religion on me. Oh, okay. End of conversation. There's no debate there.
Non-starter.
They're trying to make me religious, and whatever that means. But again, it's one of the most beautiful parts of sobriety is that I can look at a Buddhist text, or I can have an experience that inspires awe. I can be sitting here with you dudes talking about this. And I'm connected to God. I'm connected to you guys. You're all part of this. This is part of it. So I find holiness in all of this. And, once you have that kind of conscious contact, when I wake up in the morning and I feel that I do every morning, I don't wake up stoked. I wake up scared a lot of the time, but I know I have the ability to pause, to reflect, to pray, and to meditate. And then I come back to myself. There are tools that help you maintain and kind of facilitate that connection that are really not that challenging. Right. And then all of a sudden, that really aching loneliness that has just occupied us, those of us who suffer with alcoholism and addiction, is gone. And when that leaves, you're so much more receptive to so many things. You're so much more receptive to people and to life, and you're so much less afraid. And it just provides a lightness that I coming from an agnostic background, I would have never thought I would be like a proponent of some sort of religiosity, some sort of spirituality that involves something called God. Yeah. But I'm all about it. I'm all about it because I know of how effective it is. And I don't think I'm deluding myself. There's no dogma attached to the God of my understanding. There's no punishment.
Right.
There's none of these things. Yeah. It is a feeling and an intuition that's always there. Right. This connection. It's actually a really good Bakersfield, the Kern County in general, is another great place to work on your spirituality. We have so many different churches around here, for one. And we have up in Tehachapi, we have a bunch of Buddhist temples. It's been great getting to explore all of that here and getting to have totally varied spiritual experiences, whether it's down here with my mom at the mission or up in Tehachapi.
You mentioned a lot of internal things. Externally, being married, your wife, and 2 daughters, right? Correct? Mm-hmm. What does that give you in terms of in your continuing road of sobriety and recovery?
It is, it's incredible because there's a certain amount of being present for your kids that I never had when I was intoxicated. I was always looking for, needing to maintain my intoxication. I was always having to, it was just really hard for me to be in the moment. And having my kids my wife had the kids.
You helped a little bit.
Yeah, it really, for one, plugged me into being a child, childlike energy. It is, to take yourself less serious. So that's been the biggest gift, is just taking myself less seriously by being just a buffoon with my kids. Heather's been out of town quite a bit lately. So I've had a lot of single dad time, you know, where it's just me and the kids for like 5-6 days in a row, right? Just us. And previously, oh boy, if you would have told me that like in the past,
stress, anxiety.
Oh, yeah. But it's the best time of my life. We have the best time. And I have this confidence that everything's going to be okay and that I'll handle it when it happens. Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest difference. I can't imagine what it would have been like having to struggle with alcohol and drugs.
And being a parent.
And being a parent. I just don't know how you have room for both.
I mean, it'd definitely be a disservice to the children. I don't think you can focus. I mean, if you're focusing on one God, so to speak, then the other one's...
Yeah, exactly.
It's like kind of hard to...
And that's what it is too.
You keep mentioning Kern County a lot. And so one of the things we talked about off air, and you alluded to it earlier, and I want to kind of switch focus here a little bit. And again, thank you so much for sharing. I can't imagine how difficult that is. I know you probably told your story a lot, but if one person listens to that and is inspired by it, I can't imagine it not being worth it.
Yeah, so. Man, I might as well pause right there. I mean, there are so many people that struggle with this. It's a cultural norm. The way our culture pushes us to, I'll just say, I mean, to use and drink. There are a lot of cultural variables that steer you in this direction.
It's a big market too.
And then throw a couple of years of COVID in and mix, and people are sitting at home with nothing to do but drink.
Man, oh man. But this community is incredible. You know, I've been a part of a lot of recovery in this community, and there's a lot of spectacular organizations focused on recovery. I mean, the mission saved my mom's life. My mom is 10 years sober now. My mom also, we grew up my grandfather was a communist. First book he ever gave me was the Communist Manifesto, and I was like 11. And followed by Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States and a bunch of others. So my mom was not religious either. And when she hit rock bottom and we needed help, I didn't know what to do. And when the mission stepped up and took her in, I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. You know, you're going to apply some rigidly Christian program to my mom. This is not going to work. And not only did it work, you know, it provided the scaffolding for the spirituality she enjoys now. Also the bones for 10 years of sobriety that she enjoys. And she worked there she still works there. She retires in a month, but she's been there for 10 years and she managed the women's program, and she's been through hundreds of women's recovery and men's recovery over there. And we've run programs at the mission for several years, and there's a lot of really special places here. It's a good place to get sober. And there's a lot of folks who know how to do it.
Earlier, you were talking about Kern County and nonprofits and we're giving. There's no question. I mean, I've been involved in a lot of nonprofits, a lot of nonprofit boards. I'm a Rotarian. Even in tough times, in as many people as we have here, and the same people are getting asked all the time, they still pull out the checkbooks.
Exactly. You just said like the same people are getting asked all the time. You're right. And they really do.
And they still whip out the checkbook.
It's an incredible community, man. I mean, when I first found out, when we first did our big first event in 2009, somebody said to me, well, you know, the Relay for Life in Bakersfield is the most successful per capita by like orders of magnitude.
Like, American Heart Association saying they're one of the highest.
Really? We raise more money. And since then, you know, I did the Man of the Year for Leukemia and Lymphoma Foundation, raised money for the mission. There are so many incredible nonprofit organizations. And it's kind of a unique, you know, right-wing Republican kind of bend, which is a really kind of wonderful amalgamation of government, you know, doing what it's supposed to do.
Right.
And then the nonprofit sector picking up the slack and doing what it's supposed to do and being supported by the community. It's actually a really good balance, you know, and it gets the organizations that its constituents support become successful, and they get money from the community and to hit important matters to folks. Yeah, it's a wonderful place. I always say that like Marley's Mutts would not have existed anywhere but here. There's no way. Every step of the way, there was some person or groups of people or a company that helped keep me going and persuade me to keep doing it. I mean, there were a lot of times, I'll never forget the first parvo outbreak we had, and I lost, it was a litter of 10 puppies. I think 6 of them passed away. And I had $3,500 in the bank, which $3,000, I'd never had $3,000 ever.
Aggregate, let alone ever. In the bank, right.
Ever. And when all that went gone, I was like, well, there goes my short rescue career. You know? And I took that to my recovery fellowship, and they were like, you know, you're not done, buddy. Here's $800. I raised $800. It was like 10 guys in a room, and they were like, no, you're going to keep going, buddy. And I was like, holy cow, you know? Okay. And I mean, this is a perfect transition into Motor City. Like, so in my brain back then, I didn't have a car. I didn't have really anything. I'm living in my dad's garage, and I needed, like, Marley's Mutts was coming together. We had incorporated. We'd become a nonprofit.
And you're traveling, right? You're going up, pick
all
shelters.
over the place. Right. Yeah. I mean, living in Tehachapi, haven't come to the shelter down here. It's an hour. So I needed a car, you know, and so I thought, well, I'll just go to a dealership. By that point, we had a social media following. This is in let's see, this was in 2012. So we had a pretty good following by that point. And I just said, oh, well, let me back up a little bit. I did have a car. It was donated by like our biggest fan. She passed away. And then I hit a deer. It was a Saturn station wagon, a 98 Saturn station wagon. I loved that car. Hit a deer and no more cars. So we're SOL.
Back to square one, right?
Yeah, really struggling. And so I'm just like, well, I'm going to go down to Bakersfield and I'm going to go to every dealership until they give me a car.
So someone hands me keys to a car.
Here's my binder. Here's all of our social media statistics. Here's what we can offer you. Here's how we can, tie you into our work. And I fully expected to be successful, and we got shot down from every dealership. And then I walked into Motor City the next day feeling relatively, diminished.
Right.
And
Rejected enough.
And it was crazy. John Petrie, the head honcho over there, just an incredible
He's a good dude.
He's an incredible dude. He happened to go to my high school, first of all. What is the chances that he went to Redondo Union High School in Redondo Beach? He's an incredible dog guy. And he just kind of got it. And he really liked what we were trying to do. And he said, well, I think we can do that. We'll wrap the vehicle and we'll use one of here's how we're going to work it out. And I think that'd be great. And, we basically left there with a vehicle. And it was one of the biggest feelings of accomplishment that John would believe in me, and those little bits of belief, man, they go a long way. When people that you respect and think highly of,
reciprocate that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was just incredible. It gave me it just gave me a big push to just keep doing this, keep my head down, keep working really hard. And,
do you still have that relationship with Motor City?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just came from there. Yeah. They were on we actually purchased a bus, like our Mutt Mover program. We move a lot of dogs out of Kern County to help save lives. It's one of the best ways to save lives, most efficiently, cost effectively, is to take them from areas of high concentration where they're euthanized in great numbers, like Kern County and Los Angeles County, and bring them up to the Pacific Northwest, to Canada, middle of Canada. So basically Ottawa West, we ship dogs. And so we've
to foster homes and different programs, or to
other rescues.
At the rescues,
yeah,
okay.
We just do rescue transfers.
Where they can manage the numbers, I guess, better.
Yeah, they just don't have euthanasia up there. They just have far fewer animals in shelters. The only reason we euthanize here is for space. The shelters don't put dogs to sleep for no reason. They euthanize because there's no room. They keep coming in. They've got to go somewhere.
Spading and neutering, is that just not something that happens?
No, spay and neuter is great. We made a huge dent. Spay and neuter is the key. It is the most relevant variable to animal welfare and to euthanasia. But what's challenging is paying for it. So we actually, for 6 years, we worked with the county where we supplemented for every dollar the county spent on spay and neuter, we spent $1. I mean, for our nonprofit organization matched the county. And for whatever reason, we were getting negative press from the Californian, which I could not believe. They fundamentally didn't understand what was happening. So when the numbers would come out and we would fix 150 animals that month, they would say, well, the expectation was 180. You only fixed 150. It's like, well, we're half paying for this also. Right. Try not to be so hard on us. We're just a small nonprofit organization. We spent $2 million in the course of several years. Yeah, it was not a joke.
Just spayed and neutering.
Just spayed and neutering. Yeah.
Wow.
It was a tremendous amount of money, and we had the best. I mean, you want to understand.
Has it dented the issue?
Oh, big time. It led to us becoming no kill. We were like 80% euthanasia when we started this county, and we got to no kill 2 years ago, which is less than 10%.
That's huge.
Wow. Yeah.
That was Nick Cullen. There's a lot of people that deserve a lot of credit. Nick Cullen, the director of animal control, Kern County Animal Services, he's an incredible guy, and he's just the tip of the spear, and he's really got out in front, and he didn't mess around with that phrase. People were scared of that phrase. You don't say no kill because you'll never get there. How are you going to get there? And he did it, and he got a lot of resources for rescues, got a lot of resources for Kern County Animal Services. The city's doing a great job. Josh and Julie and Marcia, everybody over at the city shelter are really stepping up and have done a tremendous job. There's great rescuers here too. There's a culture of rescue. Trixie and Dawn, those two, in terms of moving animals, getting dogs out of here to save their lives, nobody's done anywhere near what they've done. And Dawn is who ran our spay and neuter program. So we had just like 50 volunteers, the greatest volunteer corps. Christina, all these teammates that we had that ran the spay neuter. I mean, they'd show up in Arvin at 5 o'clock in Boron at 5:30 in the morning to do spay neuter, events for disenfranchised folks who needed help. And it was just wonderful, man. It was it wasn't financially reasonable. We couldn't keep it up. And it was very hard to fundraise for.
You hear all this and it's like, obviously you have a great team, great support, great volunteers, great community. But I mean, I don't know. Are you a dog guy, Dave?
Yeah.
Okay, so I love dogs. I mean, we've always had a dog, grown up with a dog, and what they provide to you and your family, and the love and the security. It's just like how they're mistreated or how people aren't really focused on returning the favor is. I know it's kind of depressing.
Yeah, but it's shifting. It really is. I mean, if we just focus on the bad stuff, we have a tendency to do that. It's kind of like the culture of sensationalism.
You mean like cats?
Hey, you know what? I thought that, and then I'm a convert.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
I love cats.
There was a hostile takeover. I don't even know what happened. I'm still recovering from it. He runs our house. I don't know what happened. He punks all of our dogs. He has 3 names, and I call him by all of his names. Like I all of a sudden you look around, you go, how did a cat infiltrate our family and start controlling everything? And he's really handsome. He's super good looking. He can beat up all of us.
That's what cats do.
Yeah, it's not just the fickle, like they give you affection when they want. He's very affectionate, but he's got the keys. It's weird.
Yeah.
He's
is he handsy with his paws, kind of slapping people around?
He's super. He's a lover boy, though.
Oh, good.
Yeah. He was supposed to be feral too. We cleared out the whole shelter at Mojave, every animal there, and there was 3 cats left. Everyone's like, "Well, we got to do something with these cats." Like, oh God, all right. So I had a barn and 2 outbuildings. I was like, all right, they're feral. We'll just turn them into and keep going in the garage feeding this thing. I'm like, I don't think this cat is feral. My wife just comes in holding him one day. Like, well, yeah, he's definitely not. He just became our cat.
Welcome to the family.
And he's beat up every foster dog that we've brought home since. It's like his first move, his first go-to move. It's like prison.
Like pit bull, doesn't matter, any dog.
Anything. I mean, we had a 90-pound German Shepherd walk into our house. This is a couple years ago, but he mercilessly attacked this dog. I mean, and put a sense of fear into him that lasted for weeks. So this dog walks through our front door, gets through all the introductions with our dogs who are intimidating enough, and then comes around the couch, and the cat is on top of the couch just eyeballing him the whole time, and just waiting until he gets around the corner. And as soon as he gets around the corner, he didn't hit him with it. He attacked him. I've never seen a cat with forward progress just attack a dog.
A 90-pound dog, especially.
Yeah, and just jumped on him and then just and it scared the living daylights out of that dog. And,
you don't spend enough time on the internet. Trust me, it's out there. I got a couple more questions for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
so I saw by 2018 you'd rescued over 5,000 dogs.
Yeah, something like that.
Where are you at now, bud? How many?
Oh, I don't know. It's a lot. We do about 800 a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 800 to 900 a year, something like that.
Okay.
So I have no idea. I think personally, in my home, I probably had 500 foster dogs probably over the last 15 years, 20 years. Yeah.
You got to get attached. I mean, do you get attached to each one of them, or is it kind of like this is, I understand what I'm doing, I got to go through the process, or is it really they're part of the family?
You can't not get attached. I get very attached. It just, especially because a lot of the dogs we take in are injured or, have a variety of issues. So some of them are with me for a long time. So some I had for more than 2 years.
Oh, I guess at that point they're the family at that point.
Yeah, but they've all been adopted. They all end up getting adopted. So yeah, it's one of the greatest things, like raising my kids with foster animals, and watching them understand the process and understand it's so good. And yeah, it's tough to let them go. I think it's probably tougher for Heather, but I'm just used to it.
Right.
And it's it's also coping, right? You're learning how to deal with loss.
Because that's part of life.
Yeah.
It is.
It's one of the biggest things one of the biggest challenges we had in prison when we first started the prison program, Pawsitive Change.
I got to get to that too.
Because the dogs are living there,
Right.
So for the listeners, we have a program called Pawsitive Change, which we operate out of many prisons here in California. And we operated out of Corcoran State Prison, which is the most dangerous prison in the United States at the time, is level 4 Old Corcoran. We're the only dog program that's ever been on a level 4 180 yard, which is, you know, there's never been one. We didn't know at the time.
What you're walking in.
Yeah,
sure.
There were incidents constantly, and there was always codes happening, and we were, you know.
But did they always treat you and your team with respect?
Oh, big time.
Okay.
Yeah, we are very respectful to them, and we just value them. We treat them with respect and love like we want to be treated. And if you do that, then you're fine.
Yeah.
I mean, not only are you fine, you really create a sense of fellowship. That's one of the greatest things in the world. But the biggest problem we had there was the guys not knowing how to cope with dogs leaving. So these are lifers. These are guys that are never getting out of prison. Some of them, oddly enough, have now, with a lot of things have changed. But not knowing how to deal with that loss and coping with it in really negative ways. So taking out you're just sad,
right? But
not knowing what experiencing sadness really is. Like there's a lot of these guys have been incarcerated their whole lives since they were children. Most of them, you know, so all of the aspects of positive change are really valuable in terms of learning how to cope, learning how to bond with people outside of your race, learning a skill, learning how to love something unconditionally and reciprocally, and to feel love for yourself. I think it's a paramount variable for why so many folks are incarcerated in the first place, is they were never believed in.
Right.
They have very low self-esteem, and it projects as uber self-esteem, and it's the opposite. And so it's one of my favorite things to do, just getting to believe in people. You know, forget if what they're in prison for, or that they're, you know, my age. I still view them as children, most of them as children. You know, I think that's a really important aspect of being empathetic, is we have to think about people as children and what they've been through and the circumstances leading up to this. But getting to watching these guys change because you believe in them, you know, just something as little as that, as just you listening to them and believing in them that they can accomplish it. You watch these kind of gears,
light bulb kind of goes on. Yeah.
And it really, it provides a new trajectory for them. Once they start to believe in themselves, like the sky is the limit. And, you know,
and that was kind of curtailed a little bit with COVID, I'm assuming, correct?
It was, but gigantic shout out to Judge Brumfield here locally for juvenile justice, and the entire Kern County probation squad. Like everybody at Kern County probation made our girls program stay open. So we had a couple downtimes, but for the most part, they kept it open.
Oh, even from 2020, 2021?
We had to augment pretty significantly how we trained. We had to do some Zoom stuff. We had to do some like at the fence stuff. So we're separated by a boundary. And same with North Kern State Prison. We had the 1 yard going. We had 2 programs at North Kern. And the warden, Warden Santoro is so supportive of our program. And every prison is its own kind of environment. It's its own
community or
kind of deal. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of stuff comes down from CDCR in Sacramento, but for the most part, a warden has autonomy over there. And she understands the efficacy. She understands what it does for communication with correctional staff and with our students. She understands what it does to set them up for success. She understands what it does for drug use, for bringing down violence, bringing down drug use, bringing down drug selling, bringing down a lot of illicit recidivism. These are some of the facts that folks should know and really understand in terms of why we do what we do. 75% of offenders like we deal with end up back in prison within 5 years. So 75% go through this program of incarceration and then end up back in prison. And in the state of California, it costs $83,000 a year to incarcerate one person. So for every one person in California, we are spending $83,000 just to warehouse them in a prison with very little programming. We incarcerate 2.3 million people in the United States right now. We spend $100 billion a year incarcerating individuals. You know, $100 billion. Name one industry in the United States that's that big. The music industry is $35 billion. The entire music industry. Healthcare, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the auto
National
industry
defense,
is not
maybe.
that big.
Right.
National defense, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I think that's up at like 800 billion, something like that. But yeah, it's just mind-boggling how much. So what we're thinking about and why this program is so effective is because we want to help reduce costs from an animal control standpoint. We're saving lives of animals that are going to be euthanized, and we're saving lives of people. Animals. I mean, I'm kind of getting to that. So we start with the dogs. We're euthanizing these dogs. Most of them are big dogs who have a hard time getting adopted. So we're putting them through a program of Canine Good Citizen certification. They're living in prison too. They live there for 3 months. The dogs live there. They are there nonstop.
And they're cared for by the inmates, taken outside.
The inmates all day long, 13 and a half hours a day. They train. The only time they're not with them is when they're sleeping.
Where do they go at that point?
Eating. They go into crates
okay.
in the pod.
Okay.
Yeah. And what it's done for our guys, first of all, we have a 0% recidivism. So we've graduated 600 at least men. And
not one has gone back to prison.
Well, only 50 or so have gotten out of prison.
Oh, okay.
And none of them have gone back to prison. And about half are professionals in the industry. So we've taken, and most of these are black and brown men of color who were not typically privy to this industry. This is the dog training industry in particular is kind of, don't take offense, white women, but it is a white women dominated genre economy. So to have a lot of these guys come out of prison and be able to access their communities that struggle with animal welfare issues, have them be able to go back to their communities, bring this knowledge, bring this, these ethics, these morals that have to do with animals, this conscientiousness, this new conscientiousness, this idea of mutual rehabilitation. These are important values. And these guys have a lot of credibility in their hometowns, you know?
So let me ask you, to be fair, so the 50 that have gotten out and you've seen no recidivism, are those 50 or I would say hand selected, in other words, or is it 50 just a general random population?
Just 50 guys who have,
I guess
so
I'm getting at is
how do they get into the program?
Yes, I'm saying
place?
like, is it, do you not have high recidivism rate because maybe there's people who would otherwise not go back otherwise? Sure.
So part of the recidivism being so successful, the lack of recidivism, is because, you know, the guys that are in our program want to better themselves. So if you're dealing with that group of individuals,
right,
you're going to have less recidivism. Sure.
They're seeking opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of people think violent offenders, folks who have been incarcerated for longer periods of time, are more prone to create victims again. And really they're not. The recidivism rates for long-term offenders are actually lower. So you're more likely to reoffend if you've been in prison for less time. But the way our guys, and when they're inside, how they apply for the program is they just talk to their counselor. The only stipulation is that you not have a record of animal abuse or female abuse. There are certain stipulations within that we kind of allow for because it would simply remove too many people from qualifying. But we do not.
Not to downplay, but like maybe a minor domestic violence situation wouldn't preclude somebody.
And nothing with kids. If you have, we can't have anybody who's sensitive needs. If we have a general population program, it's not safe to have. Maybe one day I wouldn't mind working with a sensitive needs. I mean, it's part of being empathetic. At first, a few years ago, I would never have considered working with sensitive needs incarcerated. But I think my mind is opening, and I'm willing to think about, you know, everybody needs help. And if I've done a lot of terrible things in my life, and when I needed help, if someone said me no because of this thing you did, we're not going to help you. You
didn't fit in this box, so therefore,
then it's not fair of me to say that. You know, who gets help should be who needs help. I mean, to a degree,
right?
You know?
But like you said, safety, and you can't have general population mixing with non-GP. So
and we could kind of get in trouble potentially, even just working with sensitive needs guys in general.
Yeah.
It could be a problem, but I mean, it's really just opened my eyes to the amount of love, the amount of intelligence, the amount of potential. Like, I forget the quote, but there's nothing worse than untapped potential. Right?
Yeah.
And these guys, so many of them, if you can, you know, prison is a dark place. It is something that you're confronted with every time we go in there, you're confronted with this measurable darkness. I mean, it kicks you in the chest. It is just such a tough, you just go, whoa. When you walk into a yard of a maximum security prison and you see 1,000 inmates kind of walking around a track racially segregated with their shirts off in the blistering sun, and everybody's got eyeballs on you, it's intense.
Imagery.
It's a very intense place to be. And if you can get through that and you're challenged every day. And if you can get through that with your humanity intact and you have something to offer, because you're facing just really tough things every day. You're coming up against huge challenges just to survive, you know. And if you can get through that, you're someone I want to know. You're someone who has got something valuable for me to listen to. And some of the most therapy I've ever had in life is going in there and just talking to guys. just relating to individuals. And I always leave prison feeling like I'm on cloud nine.
When I first started my practice, for about 2.5 years, I did, I represented inmates in parole revocation hearings. So inmates who were released from custody and then were alleged to have violated their terms of parole, and then they'd go back in front of the Board of Prison Terms and have a hearing to determine whether or not that was accurate, and if so, how long to send them back in for. Sure. And so I represented them during that process. So for me, the first time I went into Laredo, Wasco, or North Kern, it was very daunting. But kind of, I just want to mention that because once I kind of felt comfortable and just started treating them like I would treat anybody else, then the kind of that wall came down, and
sure.
And just was just like talking to
you,
I guess, you know.
And when the facade of intimidation kind of fades away, then you're left. I get so excited. Because when we walk on the yard, everybody, they all appreciate us and they know we have love for them, and so we're as close to a group of people that love them that they get to see.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
a lot of them don't have family, and a lot of them don't have that
support. They are family
group
that they get to see very often.
Right.
And we're also providing them with something that's going to help them. So there's nothing like the love that we get in prison.
When you said sensitive need, does that also include inmates who have mental health concerns?
No. So sensitive needs will be typically housed at a different facility. So you'll usually be, some prison facilities have sensitive needs yards. Some of them are specifically sensitive needs.
Okay.
So folks who are not safe in a general population setting.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you work with inmates who have mental health issues?
Yeah, totally. I think we all do.
Well, I guess documented or
sure. Yeah, totally. I mean, we have mental health attached to at North Kern's a perfect example. Dr. Hayami and Dr. Nichols were critical for our program. One of the best integrations we ever had is, I mean, again, Warden Santoro, she's so rad. That human being, she could have just allowed us in and not really fed or watered
hands off
us
approach,
much.
right?
Which is normal. But she's really facilitated like as much productivity as we could create in there. So Dr. Hayami and Dr. Nichols are in charge of mental health yard. And so everybody goes through Dr. Hayami. Those who are working on their lives, meet with Dr. Hayami, Dr. Nichols to work on themselves and to try to get better as human beings and with their vulnerability, with whatever they're dealing with in life. So they would always come to every class and they sit with us and they would help us integrate. And then when the dogs leave, they have sessions. So in order to kind of preempt the sadness and the really intense emotions that can come with you've taken care of a rescue dog for 3 months, every minute of every day. And then all of a sudden that piece of love, that medicine is gone.
Taken away. Right.
It's the worst times we have leaving that prison with dogs on leashes. We feel terrible.
And they know that going in, I presume, right? This is temporary. The dogs are going to go.
They know the whole format, but it's just
once
tough.
it happens,
it's really hard. Can you imagine? Imagine this is where empathy comes in. We have lost as a value. America does not value empathy. If we valued empathy, we would have a much different look at any of the number of wars we've been engaged in. Nikita Khrushchev and John F. Kennedy were both rational people, and they almost drove us to nuclear war, chaos because they refused to empathize with what the other person's experiencing. And that's something that we've lost in terms of the incarcerated. And if you could imagine being locked up, never having seen a person of the opposite sex in 25 years, never having had a kiss or a hug from someone that you love in 25 years. Imagine what that would do to your psyche, to your soul, to your spirit, and yet still these men endure. They endure like you wouldn't believe. It just gives you a lot of perspective and a lot of, empathy towards them. And so when we bring in the dogs, it changes. Stuff comes out of them that, you suppress a lot of what you're feeling when you're incarcerated. You have to suppress what you're feeling, and weakness is not something you want to communicate in there.
I'm envisioning like a tattooed, ripped, buff, inmate with this hard exterior, and then you bring in this dog, and the next thing you know, it's
exactly what it's
crying like. and just weeping and
that's
sad
what it's like to a great degree,
Yeah.
And it just opens these guys up. They have a reason to start talking about what they're experiencing emotionally, and we're trying to set them up for life on the outside. At the end of the day, we believe in all these individuals, and we get to meet their families, and we get to see how this program is repairing them. their families. These are, at the end of the day, we tend to just focus on this person committed this crime or was involved in this crime. And that's all I want to think about. Those are all the variables I want to think about. Therefore, file them away, lock them up, throw away the key, spit on their cell, whatever. But the reality is that there's, 11 million kids connected to incarcerated parents, children, innocent children that are trying to find their way in this world. There are so many family members attached to those families are incarcerated with them, and to just outright view this as a singularity, something that you just view in terms of that is
like a black and white,
is incorrect. Yeah. I really think that if we don't, and we don't have any accountability culturally for when these folks do commit crimes again, when they do create another victim after they've been released, do we have any accountability? They've just been at crime school for 20 years. You send someone to any of these prisons, they're only learning how to become better criminals. Yeah. In many ways. Yeah. And there's very little programming, very little. And if something like COVID happens, or if you're in a particularly dangerous place like Corcoran or Kern Valley, then there's so many incidents on the yard that you're in like a perpetual state of modified lockdown.
Well, hopefully we're seeing some change in drug laws, right? Hopefully we're seeing a future where we're not immediately going to incarcerate and maybe save incarceration for, extremely violent criminals or things that are really a detriment to society.
Totally. 75% of people are, that are incarcerated were under the influence while the crimes were committed. And yet we have places like Corcoran, Corcoran. There's a prison in Corcoran called Substance Abuse Treatment Facility.
Yep.
And it's just never really been used as that. So it was created, with, I think, a donation from Robert Downey Jr. And that was what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be this new model of an integrated recovery facility instead of a prison. And it's just never really became that.
Yeah,
which is unfortunate.
Did the recent mask mandate being lifted, is that changing now what you're going to be able to?
100%. So, and that came out of nowhere. Yeah, we were with mask mandates. Our hands are tied. Like, there's certain facilities we can't get into,
right?
If they have those mandates. So yeah, now that I was at Tehachapi State Prison right before I came here. So
okay.
We're fingerprinted up there to get our program back up and running there. So yeah, we're looking at Tehachapi coming back online soon. Hopefully Norco, which is down in Los Angeles, Wasco, North Kern still going, juvenile justice here in Bakersfield. And it's just a marvelous thing. It's a beautiful thing. And I'm not trying to tell the listeners how to feel about the incarcerated. It's a nuanced subject. I guess
that's what I was saying, like not black and white.
Yeah, just keep your mind open.
Yeah.
Like I am an addict and an alcoholic, right? Some people hear that and they go, oh shit. And I have tattoos, right? Like maybe they don't want to associate with me, but it's just keep an open mind. And you never know what someone has to offer. Give them a shot, and you might just be completely blown away. The things that I've learned from my formerly incarcerated and currently incarcerated brothers and sisters are some of like the biggest nuggets of knowledge and spiritual power that I've ever had. That I learned how to meditate. I couldn't meditate for the longest time, which is a big part of my recovery. I really, really struggled with it. And it wasn't until, a few guys took me aside at California City Correctional Facility and basically taught me how to do it. When we really went over my hangups, what I was struggling with, and the ways they guided me through feeling comfortable about meditation was really remarkable. I mean, it did the trick for me, and I'm reaping the benefits to this day.
And so you're grateful for meeting them and having that interaction.
Big time, man. Absolutely. I mean, they're my brothers. They really are. I mean, there's something about when you work in, it's just something about the environment of prison. It's such a volatile, intense, dark, polarized place that when you form relationships in there, and including with correctional officers, like just because we serve the inmate population doesn't mean we're not like pro correctional officer. I think correctional officers deal with it's a tremendously challenging job.
Wouldn't you think it was making their jobs easier? I mean, if the inmates are getting healthy, right, mind and body, and so therefore the corrections officers aren't dealing with as much, you think it'd be kind of a win-win for
a lot of guys view it that way. Yeah, I think there's just some older mentalities, which is just, hey, this is prison, this is a dangerous place, we're dealing with
dangerous people,
gangs, and we're dealing with really violent scenarios, and we have to. I mean, it's almost like the military, where you have to be ready to act. You have to, and when something can pop off at any time. I mean, imagine having to be in that fight or flight kind of reactivity state at all times.
All times.
Yeah. And not to mention, it's not like, it's not like the incarcerated population think fondly of correctional officers necessarily. I mean, they're kind of naturally diametrically opposed,
Although I did going back to my experiences and working in that environment for a year and a half or 2 years, I could tell that when there was a relationship between a correctional officer or at least a mutual respect.
Yep. And it's beautiful.
And you didn't have to be best friends. They didn't, you could just tell it was respectful, and then that was it. And I know one, I see him actually at the bank all the time. If he's listening, I don't want to say his name, but shout out to him. But nice. he was one of the guys where I could just tell, like, he respect him. He's like, I have a job to do, but I'm not here to make your life harder or difficult. But
totally. And I'll echo exactly that. I'll just give his nickname. Shout out to Smash. There's a couple of guys. There's a handful of even when a correctional officer allows himself to believe in someone, just gives a little bit, not breaking any rules, but just gives some respect or acknowledgement. Yeah. Like the only time they shake hands with staff is at our graduations. You know, those are when they actually get to touch a correctional officer in some sort of a connected mutual exchange of respect. Yeah. You know, and it's allowed because it's not weird. It's in the setting of a graduation.
You're not gonna be charged with assault.
Again, it's just empathy. I don't think there's enough empathy of what correctional staff go through and how challenging it is. I mean, it depends very much so on what prison you report to. I mean, if you're at a prison that doesn't have many incidents, it's a totally different environment. You're working at different goals.
It's a difficult job. I mean, same thing with sheriffs and EPD and I mean, that's a difficult line of work.
It really is.
I mean, it's intense.
How many people listening have to worry about, their personal safety at work?
Right. Or a spouse wondering, gosh, what's my husband doing at 3 a.m. working on a gang unit? Is he coming home tonight?
Totally.
I mean,
totally.
I wouldn't imagine that. I know you've been here a long time and I don't want to keep you too much longer, but, I saw a story you went to Afghanistan recently.
Oh, well, the plane did. I went to Iceland.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I met so we brought over, so a lot of you guys, I'm sure almost every listener followed our unceremonious evacuation from Kabul. And when NATO and United States forces left Kabul.
Created kind of vacuum pretty quick.
Yeah, so everything that was happening at HKIA at the airport in Kabul, back in August, we were trying to figure out. We had 300 animals, basically, roughly, at the airport trying to get out, along with several people, and we had a whole bunch of things going on, and ultimately that failed. We were very close. I mean, we had just about every aspect of that evacuation nailed down, and the CDC came through and disallowed us to perform that evacuation back in August because the CDC banned import of dogs from 114 countries in June for no reason, for no valid reason. They cited rabies concerns.
But you're not going to bring a rabid dog on a plane.
It doesn't matter. So there's a rule. The CDC has a rule. You can't bring dogs in from any other countries. So we had, I can't really get into the details because I'm not sure what I'm allowed to really talk about, but we had incredible cooperation through political channels and avenues, and as well as military channels and avenues that just wanted to make this happen. These are military folks. That's what they do. They make things happen. Give me a mission, I will execute that mission. And they were so down. And I can't believe the degree to which we got this thing, kind of approved, and the CDC ended up shutting it down. So it crushed us back in August. We had to leave all them behind. This particular rescuer, Charlotte, was the last person to leave HKIA Airport and had to go back to basically the Taliban. So fast forward to this month, and we were able to get everything back up and running. We were able to get, this is through our partners at SBCA International, Think Dog 'Em Out, Rain Coast, Marley's Mutts. We formed this consortium, and we were able to procure the aircraft. It's a huge Russian IL-76. My buddy Jeff,
cargo plane, I'm assuming.
Huge cargo plane. Yeah. Jeff from No Dogs Left Behind was there. Derek from Kabul Small Animal Rescue. They were all in Afghanistan. Long story short, this is all valid, so forgive me for this being a long story, but 32 hours prior to us leaving, so we have the green light, we're good to go, we're going to leave Kabul, land in Russia, and then Siberia, and then Canada, YVR, Vancouver. The last minute, because of what's happening with Ukraine and Russia, they said no foreign nationals can land. You're not landing in Russia anymore. F off. We go, what? We have where are we going to fly? What's our route? And go, the only other options are through Ankara and Turkey, and then through Iceland, and then to Vancouver. We're, what? How are we going to have anyone in Turkey or Iceland? What are we going to do there? What do you mean? We have to send teams to Turkey? So we had to scramble teams, and we did, and we scrambled teams that met the aircraft in Turkey, and they let us onto the airport, and we got all the dogs medically checked, and two of the pilots had COVID, so they had to be replaced. The whole Russian crew, by the way, it was 8 Russians. And then I met the aircraft in Iceland with a bunch of veterinary supplies and another crew from Great Britain.
How'd you get to Iceland, bro?
Just flew. I was on standby.
Like Bakersfield to LA? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I went to Seattle and flew direct from Seattle.
Okay.
So surprisingly, and it only took 6.5 hours.
Oh, that seems weird.
North route.
Okay.
The sun is up the whole time.
Okay.
Sun never goes down, and it's beautiful.
Interesting. Okay.
That's crazy. So yeah, I met the aircraft. It landed. I was there for 36 hours waiting for them. Got at the packing list, and we flew to Vancouver, and we landed, and all kinds of media. And it was like the biggest story in Canada for several days, and all the animals.
This is before
did
the convoy, I'm assuming. Before the trucker.
This was.
That might have took it over.
I think it had just initiated the trucker convoy. Yeah. But it was incredible. All 300 animals made it, and everybody was safe and sound, and they're all being staged at this facility. And I get so jazzed about it because I needed that news, man. A lot of my military friends, everybody's just been crushed since that evacuation. It just deflated, I think, all of us, And so to finally have, and I can't really talk about the details in terms of the animals, but the last visual many of you will remember is the Taliban on the tarmac at HKIA and a bunch of dogs that had been released from their crates. That's the last image most of us have, is the Taliban have the airport and there's dogs running around, right? And we got most of those dogs out, and it just feels really good. It feels like we righted something that was tremendously wrong, and that we, chalk one up for the good guys. Not
that it matters, but what the resources it took to get 300 dogs out of there. We're talking a couple 100,000, 500,000. It seemed like
a lot of. It wasn't something we paid for. We worked. So a lot of money was raised through SPCA International in August to make this mission occur. So
the money was already
earmarked.
Funded.
A lot of money had been earmarked for this project then, for this mission then. And then there was just other fundraising that needed to be done to account for and last minute problem solving. And, it was great. I even got to bring, my dad's a pilot and an aeronautical engineer, and we had all this. I wasn't familiar with aviation timing, so we had all these numbers that when the aircrafts were landing at Ankara in Iceland, and it's 1:00 in the morning. I go on this conference call. We haven't slept for like 3 days, and I get to bring my dad, who helped start the organization. I get to bring him in on a call and have him basically talk down to us and explain what all these numbers mean. And it was great. It was just like the perfect end of this story the perfect end was them landing in
safely,
Canada.
right? Yeah.
But getting to bring my dad in and having him, it was just beautiful. It was wonderful.
I know you made a comment, it'd be very difficult. Kern County was a very unique place that you were able to get something like this started. But there's got to be people across this U.S. How do you? What are your plans? How big is this going to get, and how are you going to grow it? People in other communities obviously need this across the United States. Yeah.
Well, we can. That's what we're looking to do is scale positive change, because positive change is one of those things where, we incarcerate 2.5 million Americans and a similar amount of animals. Right. And so these are two issues that could potentially cancel one another out. Yeah. So, and scaling them, it's not too terribly difficult. All you really need is rescue, shelter, prison. And then we have a very comprehensive, very well thought out curriculum. We have a very well thought out approach to our whole, all of our training. So implementing it is not that challenging. It's producing the trainers to carry it out, but guess who we use as trainers moving forward is formerly incarcerated dog trainers who are now out and have been working in the industry. So perfect example is Dante Farmer, incredible dude. I met him at Corcoran State Prison. He was charged at 14 as an adult, 25 to life, served 18 years in prison until he was 31. He's been out for 6 months. I got to take him to his first concert 2 weeks ago.
Who'd you go?
So cool.
Who was it? Who'd you go see?
It was Cali Vibes Fest in Long Beach. It was all reggae music. And, he finished up at MCRP, the Male Community Reentry Program, and he's been working at LA Canines, and he just moved in at LA Canines. So he's been there for 6 months, did a great job, applied the skills that he learned. Now he's been promoted. He's working as one of the main dudes at that facility. Another one of our guys from Wasco, Oscar, also works there. So it's just incredible, man. Like that's the cycle of one of our graduates. And now he's going to be able to go back to, if he goes back to Compton, I'm not sure where he's going to go back to. Hopefully we hire him. But, now he gets to go be a husband eventually and be a dad and break this cycle that he was really entrenched in. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. He's an incredible human being. Every one of them are. They're great humans, and they're conscientious, and they're thoughtful, and they're intelligent. And we've kind of judged them to a really unfair degree. Almost like there's this Lock Up Raw, right? That show that we see on National Geographic. It seems like our whole culture took that approach. That anybody who's been incarcerated for any sort of lengthy prison sentence is like an absolute monster to be feared, and we need to change that.
Yeah. I always kind of thought that with being released on parole, it's kind of like, if you've done your time, like let them go, let he or she go, let them succeed, or hopefully help them succeed. But but it seems like when you got those strings attached, like, oh, you can't do this, we're going to check in with this, do that. It seems like you're just setting it up for,
you're released you're most often released to where you committed your crime, regardless of if your family lives there. So there's strike number one.
Right.
How do you figure
no support system, no job.
Like, you also have to report to your parole officer, whomever. How do you get there? How do you get a job?
Same circle of friends that you ran with.
Exactly. So how are you supposed to? It's really, really challenging. Here locally, the oil and gas that is an industry that has begun to accept folks. Same with renewable resources, renewable energy. There were some, I don't know if these were official, but some folks started to get hired in those, and those are very well paying jobs. Yeah. And you can get plugged into something that can kind of take care of you.
Oh, it used to be if you had a felony on your record, just don't even think about it, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the questions we all know is, do you have a felony? Totally. Or have you been convicted of a felony? It's like, okay, well, check, gone.
Daniel Robinson, another perfect example. He incarcerated at 19. I think he committed his crime when he was 17, and he spent a year and a half at the Twin Towers, like awaiting. When he finally got processed, he spent 13 years in prison. And he was incredible. He was in our program for 3 years, and such a smart guy, just incredibly cerebral, took so many really challenging dogs through the program, and he got out and applied for a job at Petco or PetSmart, one of the two. And they, you're not allowed to prejudge or to exclude anyone based on their felony record, on their criminal record. But basically they just...
Where's the air quotes at?
Exactly. So he filled out the form, and then they send him back an email saying he didn't meet the minimum requirements. So he has 6 college degrees, and he spent 3 years training dogs virtually nonstop. So what are your requirements?
Yeah, right.
Didn't qualify for
and all it took was one post about that, and they took the link off the internet and changed something about the form. They didn't change their policy, but they changed something about the form.
Did you get the job there?
No.
Oh.
No, he ended up just doing it on his own.
Oh, okay.
And he's doing great.
Good.
Yeah, he's doing amazing.
Here's an important question after all this time. How do people find you? How can they help?
Oh, yeah. Good one. So MarleysMuttsDogRescue is our website. That's where all of our dogs are available for adoption. Social media. So Marley's Mutts Dog Rescue on Facebook, Marley's Mutts on Instagram. I'm just Zach Skow, ZACHSKOW. Cora is Cora Rose. She's got her own. She's got like 70-something thousand followers. She's a little.
Is she asleep?
Yeah, she's asleep.
Okay, I haven't seen her peek her head up in a while. So
she's resting.
She's resting her eyes.
She's got a big day ahead of her.
But is there opportunities for people who want to volunteer? Because we
totally.
talked about Kern County being giving, and so we're in the midst of our golf tournament which Dave helps out with for Tiger Fight.
Nice.
Which have you met Chris Wilson?
I'm not sure.
So he started Tiger Fight Foundation, and it's a local nonprofit that gives back to families whose children are going through blood cancer treatment.
Yeah.
And half the money.
I do know. I know. Yeah. I know.
So half the money raised goes, not half, roughly goes to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Yeah. The other half goes directly to the families to help them travel and
I do know about it. My mom told me about it.
Yeah, great guy. Anyway,
really cool.
So as we're promoting, Dave helped us with the website and got all that stuff going for the tournament. I've had 3 people email me. We're already full of our teams. Obviously, we already have our sponsorships, all that, the community stepped up. But I've had 3 separate people email me saying, hey, financially right now, I'm just not in a position to help, but what can I do at the day of the event? I'd like to come out and help.
Cool.
And that's just 3 random people who just
That's rad.
Saw that and was just like, hey, I'm gonna go help.
Sometimes the hands can be more than a check.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's what we need up at the ranch. We don't really need money. We need hands that
don't say you don't need money because
you know what I mean. We could definitely use revenue to help take care of the pups. I mean, we don't just have dogs. We have cats. We have pigs, goats. You know, the whole 9 yards. And the ranch is a really cool place. It's up in Tehachapi. It's 20 acres. It's a beautiful place.
Is it open to the public?
Yeah, I mean, you have to reach out to us. We're very contained. We had some like
if a school wanted to take a fourth grade class, would you be open to that?
I mean, we have issues. There's some insurance issues,
liability,
with dogs and young kids, but there's a lot of opportunities for families and for adults to come volunteer. And then we do events down here in Bakersfield. Now that things are changing, hopefully we'll be doing a lot more. We do them at the Tractor Supply up in Tehachapi, and we do a lot of different. I mean, I'm really excited to get events going back up again down here because we would have a Marley Gras every year, and we'd have a black tie event every year down here, either at the Petroleum Club or at the Country Club, and I miss it. I miss not being down here.
Yeah, the cool thing with the Petroleum Club. Were you ever there for any of his events or?
No, I wasn't, but I was president for 13 years.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So you're North Kern Rotary.
No, Petroleum
I'm
Club.
downtown Rotary, but I was president of Petroleum. I'm the guy that moved it to Sundale.
Oh, yeah? Oh, cool. Cool. I imagine you got some blowback. Is that why you had that reaction?
The interesting part of my life.
No, that's awesome, man. That's a good spot.
We got lucky with because it was golf and outside. We were able to have the tournament every year, even during COVID. So
that's one thing we've not done is a golf tournament. We have some courses up there in Tehachapi.
Talk to me about it. I could come tell you.
That'd be awesome.
We figured it out, and it's a great way to raise revenue, and it's fun for the people that are involved.
Yeah. Links for Life too. Like we had some board members that were involved in Links for Life, so I got to learn a lot about that company too. That does some great stuff.
Okay. So volunteers reach out to you directly, and if they say,
MarleysMuttsDogRescue/volunteer. Yeah. So everything you need to know is on the website, MarleysMuttsDogRescue/volunteer. MarleysMutts.org. You'll just see adoptable dogs if you're looking to adopt. Yeah, it's all there. MarleysMutts.org/donate to donate.
Okay.
And you can stay updated on social media. We update constantly.
You do, which is nice to see.
It's probably a little too much, but what are you going to do?
No, it's not. It's great. It's part of my evening routine now.
Nice.
All right, before we let you go, we're going to give 3 rapid fire questions. I'll go first.
Oh, no.
Dave, you go second. There's no thought into this, right? So
I'm going to default to Cora.
I've met you now twice, and so I'm just going to ask questions that pop in my mind and see what you think. Okay. Favorite musician?
Bob Marley.
That was quick.
Yeah.
Jeez. Okay, Dave, your turn.
Someone just told me this one the other day. This is a good one.
Okay.
All right. Music or song or artist, favorite guilty pleasure that nobody would be like, no.
Oh, guilty pleasure. Cyndi Lauper. Cyndi Lauper, yeah. A fighter that I love came out to Girls Just Want to Have Fun recently, and I was like, that's such a jam.
I'm going to ask you that question, Dave, since you're guilty pleasure music artist.
I can't, dude. I literally...
What I would say now is like Coco Melon, anything involving children's music.
The other day, I was listening to Japanese drums for like all day at the house. You throw something at me, I'm pretty much going to go, all right.
So I've got 3 girls. I'm going to wrap myself out here. Ariana Grande, for some reason... I just love her music.
Yeah.
And it's from my 3 girls. Would never have listened. I don't listen to any music remotely similar to that ever in my life. But now that I hear her songs, I'm like, reminds me of my kid. I don't know what it is, but that's my guilty pleasure.
I'll jump into your realm there. So every night we sing the Frozen soundtrack. I dance. I sing every lyric. There's like performance involved. And we've started to branch out into like girl type music, not just from movies.
Right.
So I think I have like 1 and 1.5 just about and almost 4.
Okay. So you're starting to get to some fun
another
times.
15 years of this.
Oh yeah. Get some fun times.
Learning kid songs.
Yeah.
And I again, like we talked about earlier, once you let go and don't take yourself so seriously, I love it.
Can you actually sing?
No.
Okay.
But I do.
Okay, can't be no notes, no tune.
No, I don't think so, but I'm trying. I'll give it a shot. You'd probably stand you'd probably have to cover your ears, but my daughters don't say anything.
Do the dogs look at you with their head crooked? Because that would be the sign that there's something wrong there.
Lily, the only dog that is in my daughter's bedroom when they go to sleep is Lily, and she's deaf. So she's spared naturally.
She's spared. Okay. Yeah. All right, last one I will take. Best nutritional advice you've ever had?
Oh, best nutrition. This is what you need to know. So this is what saved my life. And this is what I think provides a real good foundation to health in general is vegetable fruit smoothies. I do it for a meal. I replace a meal with fresh vegetable smoothies. We don't have enough fiber in our diet. Your gut controls everything in your body. Absolutely. Essentially all of your functions, your immune system is your gut.
It's where it starts. Yeah.
And fiber is something that we're critically depleted of. And so the proper like flora and fauna, getting vegetables and fruits into your body is so important. So I have a good blender and I do a full blender every day with beets and spinach and mangoes and ginger and different stuff. And just that process too, just makes me feel like I'm doing something for myself healthy. I know it does make me healthier. And it's just one of those things that really, just psychologically makes you feel like you're doing something for yourself, and you really are.
Yeah. Dr. Beatty, got to give a shout out to him. He's been on the podcast 3 or 4 times now. He's my favorite doctor here locally. And he's got this poster in his office that says, from your mouth to your butt, how healthy is your gut? And that's exactly. That's his motto and trying to get people healthy.
Smoothies will help.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Zach, I sure appreciate you taking the time coming to talk to us. Anyone listening, please go check them out on social media. Please go to the webpage. Consider donating your time or your money. It's a great cause, and it'll make you feel good.
Yeah, buddy. I really appreciate you guys. This was awesome.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
No problem. Thanks, Dave.
This show has been brought to you by the Law Office of Kyle Jones, Troy Burton with the Lynn Company, CPA John Duffield, Scott Hansen Real Estate Lender, Broker and Investor, and Shannon Eckroth with the Eckroth Sales and Marketing Agency, LLC. You've been listening to the Our 2 Cents podcast. Check out the show notes for links and more information about the show. Also visit our website at our2centspodcast.com or catch us on Instagram at Our 2 Cents Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe